What situation were you in where the outcome was questionable / risky and you just decided and said, fuck it, and went with the risky choice? How did that turn out for you? I went out for a hike, and somehow along the way I had lost the keys to my car, and it had started raining heavily, and now I was stranded by my car with no way to get in, and since this was several years ago, I didn't have a cell phone. I was weighing my options, figuring out where I could walk to find a payphone, when someone asked if I needed a ride. Everything about the situation said I should say no. I was alone, no one knew where I was, and hitching a ride with a stranger in an old, beat up pickup is a classic way to end up a missing person. But I was cold and wet, and not wanting to make a long hike in the hopes of finding a phone. So I hopped in. Turns out, he was just a nice guy willing to give a ride to my place, and then back to my car. And it gets better. Along the way he was telling me about the charity group he worked for, and it really sparked my interest, and seeing that my construction skills would fit in with what they were doing, I decided to apply. I ended up moving to Southern Africa, where I would spend some of the best years of my life, meeting my future wife, making great friends, etc. The entire path of my life would be completely different if I had never gotten into that truck. That said, I'm not endorsing hitchhiking with random strangers. I don't trust easily, nor do I build relationships quickly, but I went on a date with a guy and things went incredibly, almost like in a movie. We were so compatible, and he had me laughing and smiling all through dinner. He was courteous, opened all the doors for me, etc. After dinner we went to my house and watched a movie and had a bottle of wine. We were making jokes about the stupid movie scenes and having a great time. I have never had first date sex because I viewed it as a risk, both health-wise and emotionally, because I bond a lot through sex. I decided to do it, though. We had sex on our first date. It's about a year and a half later now, and we live together. He's sound asleep next to me in bed. He makes me happier than any man I've ever met. I was working through an extremely demanding emergency in a university department with a very capable co-worker. We resolved it successfully against many difficulties. The director of the department personally sought me out to offer congratulations and compliments. I decided fuck it, I'm going to tell him the truth, which was that I put in a lot of effort, but the real person who deserved credit was my co-worker, not me. He looked at me for a second and said, son, many people wouldn't have said that the way you did. The next time we have management opening, it's yours if you want. Vacationing in DC with some friends last year. Marijuana laws are shady AF out there. It's legal to smoke /have /gift, but not legal to sell it. So we googled around and found an underground collective. You had to text them and they would send you back an address. So we get the address and call an Uber. We are 5 nerdy white guys in town for a protest the Hero show to help you picture us. Well, we notice we are driving into the rather unsavory portion of DC. Like, boarded up windows and bars over those that aren't boarded and graffitied up. We decide we really don't want to get out here, but our Uber driver essentially kicks us out. We immediately get swarmed by a group of 5 gangster looking people hitting us up for cigarettes and money. We weasel our way away and start walking towards the address. No car or transportation with pockets full of cash for some weed in the ghetto. Well, we get to where we were supposed to go. A boarded up shop front with a 6'4", 300-pound guy with dreads waves us over. We walk up to him, and he apparently knew why we were there. He takes us inside to a windowless lobby and tells us to get out our wallets. Immediately knew we were getting fucking robbed and possibly worse. I've seen The Wire and knew what's noted in buildings like this. I hand him my wallet and he rolls his eyes and says, "Get your ID out, fool." He verifies we are all 21 and then opens a solid metal door. It was like a fucking movie. He opens the door and Snoop Dogg is playing, and there are 10 tables set up in a circle full of high quality bud and edibles and all sorts of things. We make our rounds, buy a bunch of stickers and pens. Got gifted our associated weed gifts for making purchases. Got the fuck out and got an Uber back to our Airbnb and proceeded to smoke till we couldn't move. That was a roller coaster of emotions. Going from being so sure I was about to die to my first legal weed experience. I moved to another country to live with my then girlfriend. It was always going to have risks, and indeed we broke up 9 months after moving in together. It's now 12 months after the breakup and I have a new job, which happens to be the highest paid job I've ever had. New friends, a new partner, I'm buying my first house, and I'm the happiest I've ever been. That risky choice led me to a dark place for a few months, but I came back swinging. Short story. 200% worth it. I flirted with a friend's ex, girl, who he treated like shit, after he started dating a new girl, girl B. We got into a big fight over it, but I started dating girl A anyways. We got over our fight and he's now engaged to girl B, and I'm engaged to girl A. So I think it worked out pretty well, all things considering. Returning to rugby after my second ACL tear. I absolutely love rugby, it was the best part of my life at that point in time. A year later I tore my ACL for the third time. No one was surprised. A couple of family members won some money based off the bets they made, not on whether it would happen, but how soon. Thanks guys. I don't regret it in the slightest. My knee was already fucked, it's still fucked, but I got another season and a half of playing. And I scored my first try in that time. People love to say I told you so, but I knew what I was getting into. I didn't let it slow me down. I agreed to marry a guy who would take me far, far away from my abusive family. I'd known him for just a couple years, and didn't love him. I'm sure he didn't love me either. But he did take me far away from dangerous people. We were married for 10 years. During that time I did everything I could to make him happy, to thank him in any way that I could for saving my life. But we had our share of problems. He'd always liked to drink, but over the years he turned into an alcoholic. When I realized that I was no longer safe with him, I left. We still see each other almost every day and help each other out in our day-to-day lives. We have one child together. He stopped drinking, and for a while we talked about canceling the divorce process. But it's not going to happen. I don't regret my decision to marry him one little bit. We buy each other groceries, share meals, laugh, watch movies together, go on vacations, do projects together, help each other financially on the rare occasions when we need to, etc. I was in need of money to pay off a loan that was going to double if I didn't pay it by a certain date. McDonald's pay enough to meet my deadline. After debating with myself, I decided to be a cam model and was one for 2 months. I paid off the loan relatively quickly but continued camming. It was easy money for the small amount of time I invested into it. Got hired to a new job. 1 month in, I get a call for another job. Better paid but longer trial period, more stringent on retention, since it's one of those you're here forever deals. Decided to kick my bird in the hand to the curb and give it a whirl with the new job. I felt awful, to be honest. Manager at the place I left was awesome, but it had to be done. Even so, I knew if I blew it at the new place, there'd be no going back to the previous, and I'd either have a weird gap on my resume or a hard to explain little blip in the middle. Thankfully, it all worked out. I was having a good conversation with a girl on Tinder, but was pretty nervous about actually meeting her. Ended up saying fuck it, and invited her to meet up for a pretty innocuous outdoor activity for the upcoming weekend. To my surprise, she said yes, and so I was left with a week of debating whether I wanted to carry through with it or not. I ended up saying fuck it again, and manned up, and went to the thing. She ended up being awesome and we have a great first date. We're married now. I met up with a guy I met on Tinder at a hotel. We didn't even text much beforehand. He just said, let's meet up here. I did let my best friend know where I was going and shared my location, but in retrospect and even in the moment I thought girls die from experiences and meetups like that. I was going through a hedonism phase, which is why I said fuck it. He actually became my boyfriend for like 7 months, and it was the best sex I've had so far, so I guess it didn't turn out bad. I don't think I'd do something that reckless again though. We launched our helicopter from the back of our ship during a storm about 200 nm west of the Pi. We were very heavy and close to our maximum launch weight at the current dam with a full extra internal fuel cylinder dying patient. She needed emergency surgery and needed to get to a hospital ASAP. It was an operational necessity to evac the patient. It was just getting dark when we launched. Around 100 nm from the ship and way outside the pie we lost comms. A violent storm and frequent lightning strikes kept turning the cockpit blue. We had no nav, so we followed a roughly northeast track on the compass. Flying blind, it's called dead reckoning for a reason. I thought we were fucked and would eventually splash in the Pacific Ocean and go swimming for a bit. We kept making calls on guard frequency and the blind to no response. I was mentally going through the emergency ditching and egress procedures and thinking about that moment when the Helo to flip upside down and all violent motion comes to a stop and it starts sinking, which is when we can egress safely. We all hate that feeling during our emergency procedures training in the pool, which we do blindfolded. Was also wondering if we were going to get the packs off the aircraft. The sea state was going to be pretty rough, and making a controlled water landing was not likely during a storm like this. So, fuck it, let's see what happens. We usually joke around a lot when flying. Not tonight. We just kept a close watch on the instruments, fuel state, and wondered when something would break. Things frequently break on a Helo, especially when it's getting beat up by rough flying or bad weather. The other pilot and I would occasionally look at one another with a so far so good, let's see what happens sort of look. Our mid-gauge is green, good gats XXX to splash checks. The crewman kept us informed on the aft station checks and patient status. We were all thinking the same thing. So it was time to be 100% on game. About 50 nm or so outside of the pie we got comms with a checkerboard A4 flying out of Subic Bay that was doing night bounces. Soon we had full nav and comms with the tower, and received a precision approach direct to the runway piano keys, where an ambulance was waiting. We landed, got our ship dock and patient on the ambulance and air taxied to the flight line to shut down, do a turnaround inspection, and refuel. Before long, we were airborne on a beautiful starry night, heading back to the ship where we recovered without incident. When we shut down aboard ship, we folded the blades and the bird was pushed back into the hangar. No big deal. The next day we debriefed and never really talked about it again. That's what we get paid to do. The best part is the patient did fine, and she rejoined the ship about a month later. The doc met us in Singapore a couple of days after the medevac flight. Good times. The biggest one was leaving a comfortable job I did well, sales management and training, to a new one I wasn't so sure about, computers. I had a family that would be vastly affected if I failed. But the pay was so much better and more stable. I mean, I could miss out on commissions, but overall I felt it was better pay. This was right before the dot-com boom in 1995. There were few assurances. I now make 6 figures, nearly 6 times my paychecks from back then. And I love what I do. I had a lot of dumb luck, but luck favors the prepared. Some girl messaged me on a dating website 3 years ago. She lived across the country. We hit it off, but she was wishy-washy, and I immediately fell and committed to her. A few months later I decided she was worth it the risk. I left my family and my job and moved in with her and her parents in a new state and city 3k miles away from where I grew up and lived for my whole life. 3 years and an engagement later, I'm now freshly single, not my choice, in a state where I don't have close friends or family. But hey, I built a lot of memories and grew a lot as a person. A month or so ago I was in Brooklyn, meeting friends for a drink at a friend's sister's boyfriend's bar or some shit. I was staying in Manhattan. The friends I was meeting were in East Brooklyn-ish. We met up, had the most lovely time, super drunk on a Monday night in New York, and I get in my lift chair to go back to Manhattan. Second passenger gets in, and I say shit, I forgot my bag in the final bar we went to. Told the Lyft driver hey I'm just gonna walk back and get it. I was leaving New York the next day and didn't have time to go back to get it in the morning. Even though I had less than 10% on my phone left and it was 30 degrees. Phone died. Got lost for an hour in residential Brooklyn. Didn't see another human soul until I stumble upon 2 women smoking. It's 3 AM mind you, and I'm drunk, crying, alone, dead phone. I'm like hey I'm so sorry to bother you. I left my backpack in a bar at such and such intersection, can you just point me towards it? I'm lost and nobody knows I'm here. I shit you not. One of the women was my Lyft share passenger from an hour or 2 ago. She's like honey I know, I was in the Lyft that you got out of, you could have just had us turn around and get it. Lem call you a lift, the bar is a mile that way. Calls me a lift. I get to the bar before it closed. Plugged in my phone at the bar. Bartender gave me a free shot to help my drunk ass get drunker and celebrate not dying. Lifted back to Manhattan and told my friends the story in the morning. I met my wife when I was on vacation 5 years ago in Florida. I was walking down the street and heard a song by The Offspring playing at a bar, so I walked across the street to check it out. I met her at 3 AM and we spent the following 3 days together. We fell madly in love almost instantly. We clicked on every level. She was living out of a hostel and had no family anywhere. When I was flying back home, my flight had an engine malfunction, so I was stuck one more night. She met me at the airport that evening and we took the flight the next day together back to my city. A year later we were engaged, a year followed that, and we were married. We had a baby almost a year after that. Our families were so incredibly happy for both of us. We had something I don't think many people ever experience in their lifetime. I'm now a very happily divorced single dad. My son's favorite superhero is Spider-Man, and we have tickets to the new Avengers movie coming out. I also crush it on Tinder when he visits his mom. Putting my voice out there. I stream on Twitch for most of my income at the moment, and I was never too impressed with myself. I have a bad habit of starting things and never going anywhere with them. Since I started streaming, I've made so many friends from all over the world. They've all given me the confidence to start chasing one of my dreams, voice acting, and now my voice might have made it into a video game demo. I'm also lined up to voice a character for a game mod. Although small steps, this is infinitely further than I ever thought I would go.